By the late 19th century, Europe was standing on an uneasy threshold. Scientific progress had fractured the old spiritual order. Darwin challenged the divine origin of life. Nietzsche proclaimed the death of God. And Freud was preparing to expose the hidden depths beneath the conscious mind. Beliefs that had shaped humanity for centuries were beginning to crumble, leaving behind a space filled with doubt, introspection, and psychological unrest. It was a time when religion faltered, reason surged, morality shifted, and desire emerged from beneath layers of repression. Within this cultural upheaval blossomed symbolism, an artistic movement that rejected realism and naturalism in favor of exploring inner worlds, dreams, myths, archetypes, fears, and subconscious impulses. Symbolist artists were not interested in painting what the eyes could see. They wanted to portray what the soul whispered. Their works were encoded in metaphor, mood, and spiritual tension. And from this climate steeped in crisis, reflection, and existential questioning, emerged one of the most haunting images of European symbolism, Lucifer, 1890, by Franz von Stuck. This Lucifer is not the grotesque devil of medieval imagination, surrounded by flames and horror. Stuck chooses a far more dangerous, far more modern interpretation. Lucifer as a figure of beauty, power, introspection, and disarming humanity. An angel who doesn't scream or writhe in punishment. He pauses to think. His fixed, penetrating gaze doesn't look upward toward a heaven he lost, nor downward toward a hell that awaits him. It looks directly at us. And that single choice, those eyes that analyze rather than threaten, turns the painting into a psychological inquiry more than a religious one. Lucifer becomes a mirror, not a monster. Before we begin our deep exploration, I'd like to extend an invitation. Share your own metaphors, interpretations, or hidden symbols in the comments. This painting holds so many layers that no single reading can exhaust its meaning. Perhaps you'll notice something I overlook, or uncover connections only your perspective can reveal. With that mindset of shared discovery, let us turn to the creator of this unsettling gaze, Franz von Stuck. Franz von Stuck was born in Bavaria in 1863, raised in a rural environment that would later contrast with the intellectual refinement of symbolism. From an early age, he showed exceptional drawing skills, and his academic training was rigorous, classical, and disciplined. Yet Stuck wasn't content with replicating reality. What truly fascinated him was revealing the hidden meaning behind gestures, bodies, and mythological narratives. He didn't paint to imitate life, he painted to decode it. His artwork is populated by liminal beings, seductive fauns, fatal women, elegant demons, wounded heroes. These figures inhabit the space between desire and guilt, between moral boundaries and primal instincts. Because of this thematic focus, Stuck became known as the painter of sin. But the label is misleading if taken literally. Stuck didn't moralize about sin, he analyzed it. He portrayed it not as a punishment from outside, but as a force that rises from within the human psyche. One of his most daring ideas was that evil should not be depicted as grotesque. True temptation is never ugly. What seduces us is what we desire, and what we desire can destroy us. Stuck understood that the most dangerous form of darkness is the one that wears beauty as its mask. That is why his demons are statuesque, his mythic creatures alluring, and his fallen figures dignified even at their lowest. In his work, darkness is not repellent, it is seductive, intelligent, and psychologically charged. Around 1890, Stuck turned his attention to the figure of Lucifer. He could have chosen to portray the devil as chaos, fire, or deformity, as tradition dictated. Instead, he crafted a Lucifer who embodies intellect, autonomy, and rebellion, a Lucifer who thinks. This reinterpretation challenges religious dogma and signals a shift towards seeing Lucifer not as a supernatural villain, but as a symbol of critical thought, individual will, and the human struggle against imposed order. What emerged from Stuck's brush is one of the most iconic portrayals of rebellion and introspection in all of symbolist art, a demon who doesn't destroy but understands. In Lucifer, Stuck strips away every unnecessary element. There is no hellfire, no dramatic battlefield, no divine wrath. Instead, Lucifer sits against a nearly absolute darkness, an empty backdrop that works as a metaphor for isolation and internal conflict. This void represents not just the fall, but the mental space of someone who must confront the consequences of their own choices. Lucifer's body is powerful, sculptural, almost heroic, yet his posture is introspective, tense, controlled, thinking. His bare torso is not eroticized. It symbolizes exposure, the vulnerability of someone stripped of celestial glory, left alone with nothing but the truth of his own consciousness. Stuck portrays the fallen angel at the precise moment when rebellion becomes reflection. But the most striking and psychologically potent feature is the gaze. Lucifer looks directly at the viewer, his expression a mixture of pride, intelligence, and cold awareness. There is no rage, no sorrow, only judgment. His eyes seem to ask, "And you? Would you have obeyed?" This Lucifer represents not moral evil, but autonomy, the will to challenge authority, the spark of individuality that refuses submission. He is the embodiment of the Jungian shadow, not the monstrous side of the psyche, but the repressed intelligence, ambition, and desire that society forces us to hide. The shadow is not merely dark, it is powerful, creative, restless. Stuck's Lucifer embodies the danger and beauty of intellectual pride, the loneliness of independent thought, the seduction of forbidden knowledge, the quiet dignity of the one who refuses blind obedience, the psychological cost of choosing one's own path. The painting functions as a mirror. It's unsettling not because Lucifer looks evil, but because he looks familiar. He reflects what we might be if we dared to defy everything that restrains us. When Lucifer was unveiled around 1890, it stirred a peculiar discomfort. In a society still anchored in Christian moral frameworks, portraying the devil with beauty, dignity, and psychological complexity was seen as subversive, not scandalous in a vulgar way, but intellectually threatening. Stuck didn't attack religion, he interrogated it by humanizing its most feared figure. During the early 20th century, the painting was often interpreted through a moral lens, a warning about pride and disobedience. But as psychology, existential philosophy, and modern thought evolved, Lucifer took on new meanings. No longer just a religious icon, he became an archetype of rebellion, a symbol of the outsider who sees too much, a figure of intellectual resistance, an emblem of the individual who chooses truth over comfort. Over time, Lucifer became deeply embedded in cultural and philosophical discourse. Its influence extended beyond art history into discussions on the nature of evil, human autonomy, mythic archetypes, and the psychology of the fallen hero. The painting has inspired scholars, writers, creators, and digital audiences alike. It is now a recurring image in studies on symbolism, the aesthetics of darkness, and the anti-heroic figure. Although the work hasn't been surrounded by famous restoration scandals or museum controversies, its significance has grown steadily. In the digital age, Lucifer's gaze has become an icon, circulating in essays, blogs, video analyses, and social media posts that explore the darker side of human nature. His image has transcended canvas and museum walls to become a cultural symbol of introspection and defiance. Today, Lucifer stands not merely as a painting, but as a timeless metaphor for the human struggle between obedience and self-knowledge. Returning to Lucifer's gaze, after understanding the context, symbolism, psychology, and legacy of this work, one thing becomes clear: the painting endures because it does not depict a monster, but a mirror. Lucifer's eyes judge, question, and provoke. They remind us that light and darkness are not cosmic forces outside of us. They coexist within every human being. The painting survives not because it glorifies evil, but because it portrays the eternal human tension between following and questioning, between security and freedom, between certainty and truth. It forces us to confront our own shadow and ask ourselves uncomfortable questions. Share in the comments the symbols or metaphors you found in this painting. Let's turn this analysis into a conversation rather than a monologue. If this exploration offered a new way of seeing Lucifer, I invite you to subscribe, leave a like, and join me in discovering more artworks that don't just ask to be looked at, they look back at us.